Okay. So, welcome to the sixth of the ELSL webinar series, Lighting, organized and presented by College of Architecture, UP Diliman. In our and currently we have the faculty members as introduced by Professor Fontanoza, and on our YouTube channel, our students, professionals, and others whose interests were picked by today's topic. So before we start, we want to remind our audience of the following basic webinar etiquette. For Zoom participants, kindly turn the audio to mute mode and turn your videos off so as to not disrupt the presentation, and use the chat box for questions, which we will direct our resource speakers forum. So before we introduce the speakers, today we are delighted to be joined by our speakers, Ms. Christine Secanco and Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga of CSLDI, and by our webinar reactor, landscape architect Christine Endencia of PGAA Creative Design. Landscape architect Endencia will be providing with us her wisdom and her take on the knowledge that will be shared with us by our dear speakers at the latter part of our program. She is a project manager at PJA Creative Design and has over 9 years experience in handling different scales and types of projects, including the award-winning Makati Urban Patios and Ortigas Elevated Plaza. She also is the current VP for Internal Affairs of Philippine Association of Landscape Architects. So today, our speakers, Ms. Christine Secanco and Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga, are the founders and principals of Christine Secanco Lighting Design Incorporated, or CSLDI. Ms. Christine Secanco trained with some of the true pioneers in the field of lighting design in North America for close to a decade until 1994, when she founded CSLDI with husband, Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga. After graduating Bachelor of Arts in Applied Arts and Sciences with an emphasis in environmental design from the San Diego State University, then Master of Fine Arts in Architectural Lighting Design from Parsons School of Design, she went on to work at Horton Lease Lighting Design Incorporated and Johnson Schwinghammer Lighting Consultants, where she gained exposure and experience to a wide array of lighting design projects. In 1994, she founded her own company and was joined by Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga, who himself is a graduate of BS Electrical Engineering and Mathematics from University of the Pacific in California. To date, CSLDI has worked with the country's leading property developers in the country, and as well as the top and foremost designers here and around the world. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Christine Secanco and Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga.
Hello, everyone. We're so honored to be able to share with you what we know about sustainable landscape lighting. And we're going to tie this talk with what's happening to us with the pandemic. So here we are after a year, and it seems like we are no better and maybe even worse with no end in sight. And that's why landscape design and landscape lighting is very important, especially with the limited space that we have or people have, and the increasing instances of mental health problems, and even with quarantine fatigue. Just the basic need of socializing with people to connect, it has never been more important. Landscape design and lighting has never been more important. And this is our topic for today. Okay, so what makes landscape lighting sustainable? Based on our experience, we made a bullet point of what we think is what makes landscape lighting sustainable. So first and foremost is light only where it's needed. It doesn't necessarily mean less lighting fixtures. Preservation of the dark sky, which is very important. the use of energy efficient lighting fixtures, LED, which is common nowadays, the use of solar lighting, the use of rechargeable lights, and the use of lighting control. We have number two, landscape lighting as a response to COVID-19. So landscape lighting makes it possible for us to extend the day's activities into the night. It promotes overall health and well-being physically, mentally, and spiritually. And landscape lighting makes it possible to observe proper COVID protocols of social distancing and being in the open air when socializing. So let's break it down. Light only where it is needed. What you're seeing here is an actual project of ours. This has been shortlisted for the Dark Awards. We're probably the only Philippine entry to get into that into the Dark Awards. So light where it's only needed. When I say it does not necessarily mean less light, it means that you don't scrimp on the fixtures. First of all, you have to have a focal point. In this photo that you're seeing, the focal point here is actually the tea house. This is called the tea house. We call this the tea house. So this is the focal point. And then you have to make a composition of the whole entire focal point. So as you see here at the sides, we have the bamboo. These are actually black bamboos, and then its silhouette. It's lighted in the back, so it becomes a silhouette, and that's how we wanted it to be. Here in front, this talisay tree is lighted from below. We like the lights to penetrate the leaves because it can. Whereas for some plants, they cannot really, with the big leaves, you cannot really light it in this manner. And then, of course, we have this palm. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's a palm. And then the lotus underneath. So it becomes a composition. Actually, this star apple on the back is not part of the property, but we lighted it. It's part of the neighbor's tree, but we lighted it and it becomes part of the composition. In front of this tea house is the main house, and the main house is also lighted. Just because it is landscape lighting, it means that we also have to light the structures surrounding or beside the landscape so that you can perceive what's happening around. So in this case, we have the main house lighted. We just lighted up the columns. And then at the side, we have the Eugenia parang hedge that covers the back of the house. And then here at the right side is actually a rotonda where the cars can come in and go around this ficus tree. And so when guests come in, they just go around, then they can go out. Okay. So preservation of the dark sky. This is very important because when you light the landscape, it is not just about lighting the plants or the structures, but it's also about preserving the dark sky. We want to, of course, minimize light pollution, and then we want to preserve the night sky. That means when you enjoy your garden, you get to see the stars. Because that's quite a rarity, especially in Manila. When you're in the city, because of light pollution, you won't be able to see the stars. When you go out, like in the valley, there you can see the stars pa, or somewhere outside of the city. So we want to preserve that as much as possible. This is the tea house. This is the main house, and the night sky is what we want to preserve. Okay. Um, okay. Let's see. Let me go back. Okay. Uplights are not directly pointing upwards, but rather grazes the plant, the trees, and the shrubs. And that's it. That is what we do when we do the lighting for the landscape. It's not really directly. Sometimes there's a bit of a slant when we do the uplights. Okay. Also, the use of energy efficient lighting fixtures, the use of LED fixtures. Well, nowadays, it's mostly LED that we use. And since LEDs are quite new technology, they now come in very small lighting fixtures. They're quite small and it's easy to conceal and it uses less power. This, of course, is a very nice fixture. As you can see, it's not even black, it's not even green, but it's more like camouflage olive green, which we try to use in all our projects. Not this particular fixture, but if we have a black fixture, we paint it. We paint it with this type of color. It just blends better than having it in black or any other color. Okay, so this is the front of the tea house, and then at the back of the tea house, the property converges into a triangle. So this is like in a slant. The tea house is in a slanted position, and at the end of this tea house in the back is a giant tree fern. This giant tree fern becomes an anchor which draws in the people inside this tea house. This is the giant tree fern, and it is lighted from below and actually from above. That's why you get the entire expanse of this tree.
There's about 6 fixtures just for that fern.
Just for that fern tree. And for size, you can see it's quite huge. We have fixtures at the bottom, we have fixtures concealed at the top. So there. And then beside this giant fern tree, lighting at the side, what you see here is actually the toilet. It's an air-conditioned toilet, and the use of this colored glass is very Filipino, and it actually adds to the ambiance of this area right here. This area right here is actually open air, so people get to go out and talk and smoke cigarettes here. So the lighting is really basically focused on the fern tree, and then two wall sconces, well, a wall sconce and then the lighted glass doors. As you enter the bathroom, the toilet, there is a window at the corner because it's at the corner. And then this is actually the view. The left side, I mean the right side, is the view from the window. And this was taken during the full moon. So the idea being the outdoor coming inside. So it's the outdoor becomes part of the interior space, and it sort of expands the interior if it's small. Like in this case, this is in a triangle, so this space is quite small, but it doesn't feel small because you get to see the outside. Okay, that is the window that we were looking through. And then outside the window, we also have another composition where there's this fern that's hanging when we lighted it from below. Again, all using LEDs. And this is the black bamboos in silhouette. This is the indoor of the tea house. The tea house was actually done because the main house lacked entertainment space. So the tea house became an entertainment area. And what's important still, which we carried through, was that the connection of the indoor and the outdoor. So when you are inside and you view this, and you view the outdoors, you immediately know and perceive what is happening outside. Okay, this is the hedge that we were talking about. We lighted this up, but actually the back is back of the house na. So you have the laundry, you have the dirty kitchen, and it's divided using this. So we highlighted that. Okay. This is it from above. This actually is not there. There are glare controls in the fixtures, and these are not directly above because it grazes the. It's not a direct uplight, but it grazes the hedge. Okay. Next is the use of solar lighting fixtures. Whenever you can use solar lighting fixtures, you should use them because portable solar lights enable one to move the lights wherever and whenever it's needed. It saves on electrical and construction costs, especially for areas where it is difficult or costly to redo, such as this. If you take a look, the steps here are it's made of stone and it's uneven, so we need lights there. But to run electricity through it would be very costly and very well. It would be just easier to get a fixture, which you see here is solar, and we did that to light the steps. Also, additional lighting from the talisay tree, which we've hidden, casts light onto the steps where there are shadows, and we like the shadows that's created on the steps. So like that. So this is solar. You can just pick it up and then you can move it around. The fixture actually looks like that. It has a sensor so that when you pass by, the light goes up, and then when there's no one around, it dims down. We also use rechargeable lighting fixtures. It's a convenient way to put lights in an outdoor setting for lounging or dining, and it extends your indoor space. So these are the rechargeable lamps that we've used actually in the projects. So especially now during times of COVID, it is nice to, if you have a garden, it is nice to like be outside, especially because it's summer. So very easy to use, very practical, and it really lights up the food on the table. You can see what you're eating. We also used it in a corner setting. So this is one of them. And then the use of lighting control. Landscape lighting must be controlled because at specific times, depending on the activity of the space, you don't need all the lights to be turned on. Less lights are needed at certain hours. Let's say you have a residential condominium amenity area, or maybe just the entire condominium area. The lights from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. would be different from the lights from 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. 6 a.m. Right. So you would need security lights. For this project, what we did, we just used security lights that are turned on at the dead hours. So this is the light when it's, let's say it can start at 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. That's the light. And then we turn on the floodlight. because we found out that that's the most energy efficient way, and the client wanted it that way. This is it with from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. maybe. And then at night, during the dead hours, some lights are turned on, but not everything, just so you can see what's happening inside. But the floodlights are all again turned on. For the entire garden, we turn it off, and then you can have just security lights. Okay. Okay. Landscape lighting makes it possible to extend the day's activities into the night. It promotes one's overall health and well-being physically, mentally, and spiritually. And landscape lighting makes it possible to observe proper COVID protocols of social distancing and being in the open air when socializing. When we had a recent project, just for fun, and the project was actually in the property had a very large field, and the large field had had a view to the sea. That's the actual sea. And then on the other side was the view to the house where we had the full moon. So when I say preserving the night sky, I mean enjoying the sunset as well as the full moon. So we placed all the living room set outside, and we actually got to enjoy the sunset. And then we had a setting for a table using the rechargeable lights, of course, where we can also see the full moon. So this all happened in one day when it was the full moon last month. And what's important is that people get to enjoy the landscape, especially now that it's COVID, and people just need to go out. That's why landscape is most important. And with landscape lighting, you can extend this time that you have outside. This is just an example of what we have done, but with lighting the landscape properly, you can do so many things. You can exercise, you can walk, there's just so many things. And that's why I say it's most important, because it contributes to the health and well-being of the people using the space, especially in these times where everyone is locked down and probably has quarantine fatigue. Yeah. The presentation is quite short, and that's the end of the presentation. But Jobs, do you want to like add anything?
Sure.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, I just go like that. Yeah. Joyce, that ends our presentation. If there's anyone who wish to ask questions, please do so.
Hi, yes, ma'am. Actually, we have questions right now from professionals. So, the first ones is referring to the first project that you presented. So, how
Okay.
much will it cost to produce such kind of lighting?
Um, I will go back to that. When we entered and joined the competition, we entered it under low budget. Low budget para sa kanila was less than ₱1 million. So in terms of fixtures, there's actually a lot of fixtures here.
There's about 60 lighting fixtures. That does not include the capiz balls at the ficus. So there's about 60 lighting fixtures for the whole thing.
Yeah, but it was entered under low budget spaces for dark awards. Yes, so it all fits under 1M.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We have more questions actually. So, since lighting fixtures can be placed in public spaces, how can these be protected from or address issues of vandalism? And
Was that vandalism you said,
Yeah.
or?
yes, yes.
Okay, I think you can anchor the fixtures because the base usually has a bracket. You can put it anchor it with a concrete pedestal. Yeah.
Like we did Okada, they have like such a huge garden behind them, and that's a public space. Of course, there's security, but we anchored most of the fixtures were anchored properly so that it wouldn't move. Um,
Yeah,
Third
anchoring
was
them with a concrete pedestal is the easiest. Yeah, yeah, that would be the yeah. That's
how
the
about like covering with
you can
grills?
cover it with grills, but it doesn't really look that nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whenever you cover with grills, you also have to cover the, as much as possible, hide the fixtures
yeah,
if you can.
yeah,
Hide the fixtures in the plants or behind stones, rocks,
yeah. The
or
problem
whatever.
the problem with the grills is if the light is turned on, the grills will illuminate itself, so you will discover where the fixtures are. So if you just anchor the pedestal, it with the concrete pedestal, you don't really see where the light source is coming.
Mm.
Okay. Another question is that can you share your can you share your experience with in working with a or interface with electricians, assuming that your scope is up to design only? Yeah.
Uh, well, it's a challenge to work with electricians and the landscape designer because we need to coordinate properly. Otherwise, the electricians will trample all the landscape plants. So what we do usually is and sometimes the landscape isn't really as what is written down in paper. Sometimes it changes. So the best thing that we do usually is to put a lot of abang or electrical junction boxes so that whenever those plants move in the final positioning of the plants or sometimes there are changes, you will have enough of those junction boxes outside so you can move your lights around, and then your light should be the what we've experienced is to have more spike mounted or removable adjustable lights so that if those changes occur you can still move those lights around.
And what's very important is that the fixtures that we have a long wire. Maybe it's about 3 meters, maybe it's about 5 meters
Yeah,
wire so that we can move it around the space and it will be easier for us. Very important when it comes to coordinating with the landscape designer and the electrical contractor.
contractor.
That's very important because we don't want the plants of the landscape designer to get ruined or destroyed just because we have the wires all over the place. So that coordination is most important.
Okay. One another question would be, how are the fixtures different from the ones used outside and inside? And which lighting fixtures do you recommend that landscape architects use for indoor green spaces?
Yeah. Most of the fixtures that we use here really have a color temperature of 3000 Kelvin. Uh, the reason for that is most of the plants are in green tones.
So more
So
on the cool side.
warm, cool side. So the 3000 Kelvin will bring out those
The greens.
the greens. Now for the indoor, sometimes it can vary. You can either have a 2700 Kelvin color temperature for the inside, like some of the lights there inside the house are 27 Kelvin. So if you put the 27 Kelvin into the plants, it would only look nice if you're highlighting the trunk, but if you're highlighting the leaves, it doesn't really look that nice. So the difference in color temperature, for example, uh, yeah, that's a difference in the color temperature for the indoor and the outdoor. But when we talk about the IP rating, which
Yes.
is the whether it's going to be used for outdoor where there's moisture, water, rain. So the outdoor should be at least IP 50 plus to 60s, depends on where it is outside. But if it's a covered area where there's a roof, the IP rating can go down as long as there's no water inside, no?
For indoors, it's IP20. That means it's not suitable for rain, for outdoor.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. So in construction, the construction of the fixtures would also vary. Syempre, there's
Yeah.
more protection outside, especially for outside fixtures, especially because it's exposed to the elements.
Yeah.
Whereas inside, it's more open. That I think would be the difference in color temperature, IP rating, construction. Yeah.
Okay, another question from YouTube. This is related to playground design. So may I ask any thoughts on what is ideal landscape lighting for a modular inclusive playground?
We've actually designed several playgrounds for residential condominiums, apartments, and what we usually do for residential playgrounds is we have it on a pole. We don't do singular lighting, but we rather have poles where we flood the area because we don't want the kids to come in contact with the lighting fixtures. If we have too many lighting fixtures na isa-isa siya, like what you see here in the house, there would be more opportunity for the kids to touch it. So we don't want that. So in terms of safety, and then to complete the lighting requirement, we put it on poles and then we sort of flood the area. Really depends on how big the area is.
Okay, another question from YouTube again would be, why is it important to provide security lights in public spaces to discourage crime, especially at night?
Exactly that, to discourage crime at night and just in general. You need to feel safe also when you are at a public space. So that's why it's important to have the proper lighting, the proper location,
Yeah.
proper distribution.
Yeah. Actually, for this house, as you can see in the photo, there's only one 50-watt floodlight there. It's in the middle of the screen. It's a
This one.
square
This one.
picture. So that's the one that's turned on.
That's the security
That's
lights,
a
not so
security
nice.
And those lights there on the columns are only 2 watts each.
Yes, this one.
So there's only 2 watts per light. So those are also turned on. While on the tea house, there's 4 wall sconces there. Those are, it's not really that visible, but there's 4 wall sconces there.
That's the only thing that's
That's the only thing that's turned on. Those are about 4 watts each. So the place is pretty bright already, and we think that using those floodlights and those other lights can deter crime, can deter people from going inside there.
Okay, another question is, based from your experience, which landscape features or elements, such as water feature, feature tree, feature wall, and others, clients prefer the most to be lighted?
It really depends. It really depends on, I mean, it really depends on what like landscape, when you do landscape, right? There is a composition already done by the landscape designer. And us naman, we just support whatever is there. So it's not really a choice of whether it's a water feature, a feature tree. It really depends on what the landscape calls for. So, and the lead is usually the landscape designer. So we work in tandem and we talk, we have conversations as to how they want to go about it, and then we just light it up. The importance of having a focal point is that's very important, and having a composition of the entire space is also very important. So I can't really say there's one or the other, but really depends on the landscape designer.
Okay. A follow-up question from the one earlier about the security lighting would be what lighting preference would be ideal for security use?
What preference?
Depends on the area. Is it residential? Is it
Yeah.
commercial? It really depends.
It really depends on what. It really depends also on the facility. Like we've done the U.S. Embassy, for example.
Yeah.
We did the security lighting for the U.S. Embassy, and the lighting there, we don't have floodlights there, but the perimeter is all lighted with a minimum of only 2 lux for the whole area. It's only 2 lux. So
2 lux is very low.
and with the 2 lux, their cameras can see everything there already. So it really depends on if there are CCTVs there. If it's a expensive facility, they'll be able to capture the surveillance, the perimeter. But for us, who we just have, for example, ordinary CCTV, ordinary lights can do as well, like those floodlights, no. But if you're in a, like for example, in a residential subdivision or condominium, I don't think those floodlights will really work because it will ruin the ambience,
Yes.
because there's other people there in that area. So what we can do, what we did with other projects for security lighting, like for this garden, we have moonlights here. In reality, there's moonlight where the lights are attached on the higher part of the trunk of the trees.
Yeah.
It's right there. You can
Good.
show it there. Backwards. Yeah, that one. See those lilies on the left portion and the lotus?
The lotus here.
Those are moonlighted from above.
From above, so that you
Yeah.
got the shadow.
Yeah.
And that gives an added dimension.
Yeah.
And this one also. So there's like moonlighting also.
Yeah.
Moonlight, uplight.
Yeah.
Combination of like silhouette lighting.
So maybe for this project, for security lighting, we zone this differently, where the moonlights are zoned differently from the one that's uplighting trees, the silhouette there at the back. So these moonlights can also sort of give security lighting, something like that, because it's pointing downwards, so it spreads a little bit of light downwards. So yeah, so it really depends on the area.
Lighting, it really depends on the application also.
Yeah.
So kind of vague. But yeah, really depends on the application.
Okay. One question, another question would be, what is your opinion on lighting for aesthetics and lighting for function? Should aesthetics take priority?
I think it should be a balance. It should always be a balance. You cannot have one over the other. You cannot have just aesthetics and then forget about security and safety. It has to really be a balance. And that's why good lighting has to be designed. It has to be thought of. It cannot be us just putting light there and then that's it now because it's lighted. No, we also have to consider even there's really thought into it. We even have to consider whether the leaves of the trees are big, are small, what is the effect of how the light, how it's lighted, So I think it's really a balance of those two things. Also, actually, it's a balance of a lot of things. It's not only aesthetics, it's not only security, it's also the budget, it's also the construction schedule. It's a lot of things that you have to balance.
Okay. Next question. If it will be used in public parks and encased in grills for protection and will be hidden, how will it be recharged by the sun? I think this is referring to solar lights.
Well, that's a challenge to put the solar lights outside because that somebody can just pick it up, we don't really recommend it to be in a public area.
Unless the public area is clear. No, that only pertains to this type of fixture. But of course, there are also solar lights that
Yeah.
are on lampposts or lampposts that are solar. Those cannot be taken away. But in case of solar, you really have to orient it where it gets the utmost sun exposure. And that even has to be studied, especially in other countries, because they don't have the sun like we do. We're in a tropical country. We have the abundance of sun all the time, anytime, except for when it rains. But in other countries, they have to position their solar panels in such a way where it's optimum, where it gets optimum sun exposure. So, yun, you just have to make sure that there's sunlight. Otherwise, it won't light up.
Yes. Next question, actually from Zoom. Lighting for shopping and public spaces like sidewalks.
Joyce, sorry, can you say that again?
Sorry. Is there an ideal lighting for streetscaping and public spaces like sidewalks?
Sidewalks.
Yeah.
Again, it really depends upon your concept. Usually, we have a concept that ties into everything that we do, and then the decision of whether it's low level lighting, it's tucked underneath, whether we use a strip light where it's tucked underneath and you just see the floor at the bottom, or if we use bollards so that you can see the sidewalks. It really depends on the concept. You have to start from the concept of your design. And so I can't really say in particular if there's a really good way, but it's nice, of course, when you light the sidewalk, it's nice to see where you're walking. So you have to just ensure that there's light where you need it.
Yeah, it also depends on the requirement of the project. Some projects we have follow guidelines from international guidelines that they really have the illumination levels on the sidewalk, on the street, and the uniformity levels on the sidewalk, on the street. Sometimes those are dictated already by the guidelines. So like for the international projects in the US, what we experience is that there are guidelines already there put in place that we just need to follow. Like, for example, that the US Embassy, they have guidelines on the parking area, the sidewalk, the pathwalks, the walkways, the canopies. They will have those light levels provided already. And us lighting designers will just follow and do our calculation. And we need to fit within those guidelines. So it really also depends on the establishment if they have guidelines for us to follow.
Okay, I think this is a related question. So, is there an acceptable lux for roadways on private gated subdivisions versus highways or national roads?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Yeah, there's a guideline I think right now for the government.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did a lot of roads we also do streetscapes for residences in Nuvali, such as several for Ayala and for Rockwell. Now we're doing Rockwell. And yes, there are guidelines. I can't remember right off the bat how much it is, but the main road is a different, much higher lux level compared to the interior arterial roads. So
There's a hierarchy
yes.
in light levels. Like when you enter the guardhouse, definitely that will be brighter.
Yes.
The main road near the guardhouse is brighter than when you go in near the residential area already. So
And then it dims down. So yes, to answer the question, yes,
Yes.
there are standards that we use.
Okay, next question would be, based on your experience, does night lighting have an effect over time on the health, growth and look of plant materials used in landscape?
Yes. Well, if it's too close, to the plant, we've had
The old lights.
experience, especially with the old lights, not LED, where the plants got burned.
Yeah, previously in the past there were halogen lights, and they emit a lot of power.
Yeah.
So sometimes it burns the leaves, but right now LED, it's voila, it's LED, doesn't really have that heat, that much heat. It doesn't, But with regards to the scientific of the plants, we don't really know.
We don't really
You know,
know.
but in your experience, the old lights did they burned some leaves before, but
Because it
now
was just too close. This one, no burning, and then the positioning and the distance is, if you regulate it, they're fine. In terms of the health of the plants, so far, the plants that we have
here.
lighted and you see here, it still looks like that. It still looks like that. So we're not sure. I'm sure there is some sort of effect on the plant, but we just don't know what exactly it is.
Okay. Yeah. Next question would be: how do you calculate the reach of the light in a plan, or do you choose a preset before planning?
Hmm. Well,
The beam?
okay. Actually, for landscape lighting, the calculation or lighting softwares are all just guides for us to follow. Uh, for landscape lighting, it would be best for us to really take a look at the site like this one. We did a lot of mock-ups here. It's really the feel on what you see at that space there that made us decide to put the light where we place it right now. If we do this by all calculation, yeah, we do that
Or even in paper.
in paper. We do that just for as a basis, but nothing beats really a mock-up or an actual site visit to test the light, because the trees, the plants will not be
Static. They grow.
They grow. The leaves change, and even the lights here, as you see there in the African talisay that was trimmed,
Here, this one.
it has to be adjusted
Constantly.
constantly because those leaves grow. And even the calachuchi there in the rightmost, we have to adjust those lights because they grow, no? So the calculation can just be a guide. Yeah, we do calculation from using dialogues, EDI, yeah, but it's only a guide. The best is really to try it out and see
do
the effect,
Visual.
visualize it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of hands-on.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, we don't mind.
We don't mind doing it hands-on because it's a lot of fun doing it. Yeah, aiming the lights,
And testing the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question would be: this is regarding hotel design. How many lux is needed for a typical hotel drop-off?
Yeah. It also depends on the brand. Different brands they will dictate. They have guidelines. It's in the book already. They will have a guide. They'll say, okay, this drop-off should have at least 200 lux. Some hotels will have not 200 lux, but will have 100 lux only. So it really depends on the brand of the hotel. Some will have it brighter, some will have it lower.
Yeah.
So it really depends.
The brands actually dictate the lumen output or the
lux level.
the lux level, because, like, let's say a very high-end brand would probably have dimmer lights, and then let's say a traveler's hotel like Holiday Inn or Seda BGC, they will have a higher lux level than
It really depends on the brand.
really depends on the brand.
Okay. Next question would be: how many lux is a full moonlight effect?
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't know. Is it maybe 2 or 5? I can't
I'm not
really
sure.
tell.
I'm not sure of the exact number.
Yeah.
But moonlighting, in our experience, it would be nice if it's not too bright. If it's not too bright, if if there's like shadows, that's also better, at least from our experience, and that's our subjective choice when it comes to moonlight. We don't really measure lux levels when we do landscape lighting because it's not needed. It's what you see visually that's more important than more than numbers that you calculate. No, it's really what you see.
Okay, next question. We'll be going back to the pathway design. Could you discuss more on the importance of lighting pathways?
Well, pathways are meant to be lighted so that you can see where you're going. So that's the very basic need. So once you fulfill that, whether you do low level lighting or medyo high siya ng konti, it really depends. It really should it
Illuminate.
should illuminate where you're going. So that's number one.
Maybe number two will be for me. If you want to illuminate the pathwalk, make sure that there's no glare. If the lights are just facing downwards, lighting up the pathway, and you don't see the light source at all. Even though the light levels are very, very low, like 2 lux or 4 lux only, it's going to be bright as long as you do not see the light source.
Also,
Yeah.
when you use like strip lights that's underneath, make sure there are no dots that you see on this pathwalk. So again, like Jovi was saying, no light source should be seen if
Yeah.
possible, and to eliminate glare as much as possible.
And if you illuminate it evenly, even though the light levels are low, it will feel bright. It will feel
Yes,
bright.
it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
all bright.
Yeah, a pathwalk that is illuminated, for example, 2, 4 lux, compared to a pathwalk that's illuminated 20 lux, then you see the bulb or the light source. I'll have the 2, 4 lux for a pathwalk. No.
Okay, next question. How do you approach lighting design when there are different brands of light fixtures and lux levels? Do you have a certain bias in a specific brand where you already know or where you already know how the lights perform?
Well, it is always best to know the brand. Like if you know the brand, it's like knowing your car. You know how your car would run. You know your car compared to another car. So in our side, we try as much as possible to try a lot of brands, and we do a lot of mock-ups. Like for this garden, there were a lot of brands that already failed. A lot that failed. There's about 60 lights here, and there's only a few brands here that survived the time. This landscape design here has been for maybe
5 years.
4 to 5 years
No,
already.
6 years.
4, 6 years, and there are brands there that are still there. They're still there, so they're all functioning. But there are brands there that we try to place 1 year, not even 1 year. It's busted already. So it's best to know the lighting fixtures. It's really
When
best.
you specify lighting fixtures, make sure you know what you are specifying, because you cannot just specify anything as it is your name out there. So in terms of biases, it's more of knowing which brands
Yeah.
to. Also, different brands have different price ranges, so it depends on what your client needs.
Yeah.
Sometimes the client does not really need it to be there for 5 years. Maybe he just needs it for 2 years. So we don't have to specify a fixture that's super, super expensive, and we can probably get away with the fixture that is just good for 2 years. So you have to really know what your client is, what he needs the lighting for, so that you can specify the correct brands. And knowing the correct brands through experience is a good tool to have.
Okay, another question is how Does night lighting attract and draw insects and animals into the landscape?
Well, actually, the light will disturb the life of the insects there. It's better to turn off these lights. You can't really prolong this life till dawn. We need to turn it off. We just need to limit the usage of the lights here.
If you want to maintain the insects, you have to have less lights, and
Yeah.
you have to have the light. The color temperature should be on the warm side, never on the cool side, because that will drive them away.
Okay. Next question from YouTube. Do you have any recommendations on how to effectively light and create mood for vertical gardens, both for living and artificial?
Vertical gardens. Yeah,
Green walls.
green walls.
Actually, the Eugenia plant there is
Sort of like a green wall.
sort of like a green wall. It's already at the eaves of the second floor. So we only uplighted them. We grazed the Eugenia plant there as is in the previous slides. Yeah,
Yeah.
there in
That
the
one.
right side.
Wait, show it. But for vertical gardens, it's, I guess,
Yeah, just make sure you kind of yeah, that's
not
right.
that one. Sorry.
Yeah,
That one.
yeah. So that's about the second. Yeah, that's the one. We've only grazed that wall. That's similar to a green wall, actually.
So the question being how to light the green one, or
We've
Yes, if you have recommendations on how to effectively light and create the mood for green walls.
Yeah, we also did a project in San Antonio in the fort. They have there's like a stands there at the fort. At the back of the house, they have this green wall. We placed lights up pointing downwards, so it's grazing the wall. It's looking at that on the reverse side. So it's lighting up the green wall and lighting up the sidewalk as well. Yeah.
I guess when you have a green wall or a vertical garden, you just have to make sure that it's lighted as a whole.
Yeah.
Unless there's like specific, a specific design that you want to highlight only
Yeah.
those areas. But in general,
Yeah.
I would light it up as a whole. So I would have to make sure that light is distributed onto the entire surface.
For this wall, we selected, it's about 30 degrees beam spread. So there's like a scallop at the bottom and a little bit more even on top.
Yeah.
So if you choose like a linear wall washer, it's going to be really even. If you have a narrower beam spread, you will have those defined scallop. So it really depends on what you want.
Okay, next question. So for the reference of students, um, about the standards that you use, can you specify the name of the standards that you use when you design lighting?
Go to
Or-
IES.
For that.
IES.
For standards, yeah,
ASHRAE. IES.
since we've been educated in the US, we follow the Illuminating Engineering
Society, North America.
of North America. That's the standard.
There's like a handbook that
There's
you
like a
can
handbook,
use.
yeah. And there's a lot more you can get a lot in the net for standards.
Yeah. It's just that we're using that because we were trained there.
Yeah.
And ASHRAE also.
Okay. I think follow-up question, is there an equivalent that is used in the Philippines?
Philippines standard
Maybe the green building, I'm not sure.
standards.
But we use the international.
Yeah, we usually use the international standards in most of our projects. We still follow the international standard. We don't usually have public or government projects. That's why we use the international in our side.
We've done the standards for Ayala, for for their streetscapes.
We base that on the international.
We based it still on the international, both European and the ICI, and the
US.
US standards.
Okay. Next question. Actually, here in Zoom, what do you consider as too much light? Is there a cap to how many lighting fixtures you can use?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, for this landscape, the maximum wattage that was used here was 10 watts. And that 10 watts already has a glare control, like a honeycomb louver or a shield. So going more than that, you see the palm tree there at the back of the Calachuchi, that's quite high. But the light that you've used there is only a maximum of 10. Some lights there are 5 watts and 7 watts. So for this area, if you use more than that, that's going to be too much, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're lighting up a very, very tall. Even the royal palm there, in the other images, is quite tall. Not. There's a full-grown royal palm there. The fixture was only 10 watts. So it's more than enough, I think.
Not that one. Not that one.
There, that's the royal palm there at the back. That's really high. That's only used 10 watts right now. We don't really want to blast the light there.
And even this one and the architecture of the house, it's only 2 watts. So
and the kapis balls, it's 1.5 watts each. Yeah.
So like, let's say if you're in a resort, you don't want to overly light the spaces, because especially if there's no competing lighting around it. So even just a small light will become very bright.
Okay, I think this would be our last question. So we had a similar question earlier about differentiating interior and lighting from outdoor, but may you expound on the requirement for interior plantscapes or landscapes?
Interiors such as in malls or in hotels? What type of interior landscape? Can you specify some more?
Ma'am, I think the question in general is referring to general interior landscape at large.
Okay. Okay. Let's say it's residential. And you have plants indoors. What we usually do when we design these is that we have, if there are adjustable downlights, we get to focus the downlights onto the plants. Let me show you an example. Wait, of how we did it.
Ma'am, samples of interior landscapes would be atriums, courtyards.
Atriums and courtyards?
Okay.
Okay. So we've done something like that for a mall, a Subic mall, the Harbor Point in Ayala. They have like a courtyard in the middle of the mall. And what we didn't do like singular lighting. In other words, we didn't do the uplight, the floodlight. What we did was more like general lighting coming from above that lit the entire area. It was the same idea that was done for the Singapore Changi Airport, and where the whole entire planting area in the middle of the airport and in the middle of the mall was lit by using downlights.
But for Changi, what they did was, I think they placed horticultural lights there because the plants, they needed lights there. So there are certain types of lights that we can use as well, but sometimes the colors are not so good, nice. But we have projects wherein the client wanted us to put lights overhead to light up the plants to grow. So that's one way of doing that.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, it really depends. But most of the interiors we've done it through the light was coming from above.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can also make it coming from below. It really depends on the design.
Maybe follow-up question to that would be, is there a reason for the preference of using general lighting from above?
Um, for the mall, it just made sense that it came from above
Yeah.
because everything else beside it, like the corridors beside it, were bright.
Like
And
that.
to have a center feature, which was the landscape in the middle, which of the courtyard, to have it less in hierarchy in terms of light, it didn't make sense. So that was the reason why we wanted to bring it out and to give it more attention, and that's why we did it the way we did it.
Mm.
That was the reason why we did it.
Okay, yeah, so I think that ends our open forum. Thank you so much, Miss Christine Secanco and Mr. Joe Gonzaga, for sharing your knowledge. And now we call on landscape architect Christine Endensha to provide her take and expert input from the prior discussions.
First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Christine Secanco and Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga for sharing with us this morning your expertise in landscape lighting design, and showing us your work made us appreciate uh, the importance of well-designed lighting in our spaces. This morning, we learned about the basic principles of landscape design lighting, specifically on how to make lighting design sustainable by using light only where it is needed, the preservation of the dark sky, the use of LEDs, rechargeable lights, and lighting controls. We have come to learn about the importance of these technologies, not just for cost and energy efficiency, but also the health of the plants as well, which is very important for us landscape architects because we want our designs to last. And like you mentioned before, your knowledge in the technologies being used, using modern fixtures, help with that so that our plants just don't die very easily. Your expertise as lighting designers are paramount because of your vast knowledge and expertise with the different kinds of fixtures and technologies available. Using rechargeable and solar powered portable fixtures is a good option for us. So we're not just limited to our standard circuit lighting. Your example earlier, which showed the portable solar light in the steps, is actually a very interesting idea because the most common way that we use steps is really just by using the recessed step lights or just using overhead lighting from the surroundings. But seeing the different fixtures available, even the rechargeable lamp that is used in the dining setting, it invokes a more intimate and it just presents a different mood compared to when we use our standard lighting fixture. So it was very good to learn about those. So as a landscape architect, I think the collaboration between us and the landscape designer is very important, not just because it makes our space usable at night, but it also gives a new personality to our design when it is used in the dark. Of course, our spaces are going to look very different during the day and the night, but having well-designed lighting at night, it just emphasizes our work even more. It makes it very beautiful even when it's dark. With good lighting, which is design lighting, It is the thoughtful use of light to create shadows, emphasize textures, and suggest a mood, while at the same time makes the space functional and secure. You showed us a while ago the different techniques that you used in lighting the different areas, such as when you just graze the surface of the planting, and also using backlighting to emphasize the silhouette of the black bamboo. I think it's a very clever solution to emphasize the elements that are already there. Um, in the same way that landscape architects use a concept of borrowed scenery and taking advantage of the surroundings during the day, we have now come to realize the importance of borrowed scenery at night also by, as you said, preserving the night sky. With reducing light pollution, we are able to appreciate the sunset and also the stars and the moon, which helps us, which is also a great backdrop to our design. So indeed, during this COVID time, being outdoor is more important than ever because cabin fever and lockdown fatigue can affect our productivity and mental health. As mentioned in the talk, the well designed lighting allows outdoors to be brought indoors. So even if we are confined to our indoor spaces, we can't really go out. When we see the well lighted outdoors, it makes us feel like we're also there, even if we're really just inside. Um, Having well lighted outdoor spaces allows the day's activities to be extended well into the night. And the spaces that we design as landscape architecture, as landscape architects, while they are very useful during the day, having these spaces well lighted during the night is important because, like I mentioned, walking, biking, even having a meal outdoors feels a lot different when you're doing it in a dark space where you don't feel very secure compared to a well lighted space where you feel safe, not just from the virus, but from any other, factors. And also, it makes you aware of your surroundings. So you can also observe proper protocols set by the government. And this morning's webinar is a very good tool for us landscape architects and also our students because it gives us an insight on all the factors that should be considered in lighting design. More than the technical aspects that should be taken into consideration, it's really the visual impact and function that takes precedence over anything. During the open forum, many technical details were mentioned, like the lux levels and the different, even the cost is also very important, but it's really the balance of the function and the aesthetics that gives a maximum impact in a space. With that, I would like to thank you again very much for your very meaningful and informative talk.
Thank you, Christine. What a
Thank
great
you.
summary. You summarized it very well.
Okay, on behalf of the Environmental Landscapes Studio Laboratory, we would like to thank our attendees, students, faculty members, online participants in Zoom and via YouTube, our reactor, landscape architect Christine and Densha, and our speakers, Ms. Christine Secanco and Mr. Joe Vincent Gonzaga. We appreciate the attendance and the participation of everyone, and of course the knowledge that we've learned from both our reactor and our speakers. For other webinars and lectures, you may follow our YouTube page, Environmental Landscape Studio Laboratory, and see you in the upcoming webinars